Hi there. Hi, Francis.
Hey, how are you doing? Morning.
I'm doing okay. I'm soldiering on. I'm getting there. 28th marathon, so not too far to go now. How you doing?
It's not long. You're in the home straight.
Yes,
I
the
mean,
home
surely.
straight. Home straight, I've
It's
heard.
quite a long home straight, isn't it? That's unfortunately, it's still got a lot of miles left.
Yes, it's quite a long. It's quite a long way to go, but less to go than I've already run. So yes, Care International. You're executive director for programs and policy. Tell
Okay.
us, tell us about. Tell everyone about Care International if they just come and they don't really realize. Care International is one of the charities we're highlighting. I like to know about the beginning of it as well, because care packages. I remember hearing about care packages, and I thought it was like a slang term, but obviously it was an organization called CARE at the end of the Second World War and coming from America, wasn't it? Is that right?
It was, yeah. It was. Care's a delightful thing. It was set up, as you say, in the States immediately after the Second World War, when we here in Europe were really struggling in the
Yeah.
aftermath of the war. People were struggling to have enough food, have safe places to live. You know, we were the ones that needed humanitarian assistance then. And it's I think, a good lesson for us always to remember that things can change. You can feel that you're living in a safe environment, and that can change incredibly quickly, and we can all find ourselves needing to turn to other people for help. So at that point, amazing people in the US got together and said, you know, we want to send packages to people. We want to fill up boxes with food and blankets and toys and all kinds of things,
Yeah.
and send them initially to people they knew, kind of friends and relatives, and it became an enormous effort, which government got involved in. And it was something where you could contribute money or you could contribute goods, and you know, millions of these packages were sent. That's where we get the expression care package from.
Yeah.
Is from that effort. And of course, over the decades, you know, life for all of us in Europe has improved enormously, and we've been back into a position of being able to offer that assistance to others. I work for Care International here in the UK.
Yeah.
And as you say, I run a department which looks after our international programs work. Yeah, from the UK, we support work in more than 30 countries, but Care globally works in 100 countries.
100. Very good.
Yeah.
Yes. That's what.
And we have, as I'm sure you know, we have a real focus on women and girls. We want
Yeah.
to make sure that the world is a just and fair place for everybody, which in lots of countries means going the extra mile to make sure that women and girls are included in decisions and are given a fair chance at life.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, in case people don't know, there's about 195 countries in the world, so half of them, Care International, are working too. There's about 195, I think it is, registered with the UN. And yes, women and girls in a lot of countries still pushed to the back of the queue, just kept out of, they're not thought of first, or the men are thought of first. And this is not a good situation, which needs to change. Hopefully it's getting better over the decades. Is that getting better, do you think, or slowly?
I'm one of those people. I see an enormous amount of progress. You know, the world has improved for women just in my lifetime, immeasurably, but you can never be complacent. And that improvement is not equally spread across the world. So, you know, we have all sorts of protections and privileges as women in this country that are not extended to every woman or girl around the world. And one of the terrible things that we're really seeing, particularly in the last year or so, is the impact that COVID has had on that. It's actually turned the clock back for a lot of women and girls around the world. So advances that had been made are actually being pulled out from under them. We see that in areas like education. We see it in their ability to go to work and earn their own money. And we're particularly seeing a terrible, terrible increase in gender-based violence against women and girls under this COVID situation. You know, it's described as the shadow pandemic. It's another terrible growing curve of people being affected by that around the world in parallel to this pandemic, and we're working really hard to try and reduce the impact of that.
That is, yes, the shadow epidemic is just not good. I wouldn't even, people's minds wouldn't even go there. And I must admit, when I heard it, I just thought, oh yes, that's what's happening. So now you've worked, how long have you worked at Care International? Because you've had 20 years experience in the charity sector. Yeah, is that correct?
It is, yeah. I'm going to tell you that it's possibly closer to 30 years.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Let's not dwell on that too much. But I have an unusual career. I started my working career in art and culture. So I used to work. I started my career at the British Film Institute actually, and then I moved into theatre, and I worked. In fact, I worked in theatres when you performed there, Eddie. I was working. I was working at the Birmingham Hippodrome back in the late 90s when you had a kind of extraordinary sellout round of live gigs there.
Yeah.
And I ended up running a large arts organisation in Birmingham called the MAC. So big shout out to any old friends and colleagues from the MAC who might be seeing this.
Yes.
So yeah, and then kind of 12 years ago now, I decided I would have a change of career, and I went to work in international development. I went to live in Eswatini, which is a small country just bordering South Africa, and I worked there on a big HIV program, and I also worked with a school, which was a pioneering school fighting racism and fighting apartheid back in its days when it was founded in the 60s. It's the school that Nelson Mandela's children went to, and President Tutu's children went to. So I have an unorthodox path to to being in international development, but I feel it all comes together beautifully in the mix.
And seeing as I'm trying to encourage girls and young women to do anything they wish to in life, and so can you tell me your early years? What did your parents do? Did you go to university? Were you encouraged to do things or discouraged to do certain things? How was your early life?
Oh, that's such a good question. So my parents were both teachers.
Right.
And they had both come from working class families. They were the first people in their families to stay on at school past 14, and they had gone and trained as teachers and become teachers. My dad ended up being a head teacher, and they both were passionate about the power of education to change your life, and also about the privilege of education. If you have a chance to have a good education, you must seize it and make the best of it. And they were also very keen on saying to me, I have two big brothers, and I'm the only girl, and so they were very keen on saying to me, you're as good as your brothers, get out and then do whatever you want to do, and find your path in the world. And you better make sure you've done your homework and don't give those teachers any cheek, would have been obviously part of that message for them. So they were always enormously encouraging of me to do these things. And my career has thrown them various curveballs. I think when I said I'm giving up my career as a chief exec of an arts organisation and going to live in a small African country that you can't find on a map, they could have thrown their hands up in horror, but they were really supportive of that. They were supportive when I went to work in Afghanistan, which, my dad was, even at that point when I was probably in my early 40s, my dad was still saying, well, you're still my little girl, Francis, just be careful. But I'm proud of you, get out there and do it. So I think my parents were really always very encouraging of me to follow what I wanted to do, follow my values, follow my passion,
so
and help the world a better place if I can.
That is great to hear. But when did you go arts or sciences when you going through? Did you go to university? How did that work?
I did. Yeah, I did. I did go to university. I went to Leicester University and got a degree in English.
Hang on, but before that, arts or sciences going on? If you're doing A levels or
through school.
Yes, but I want girls and young women to think, okay, this is what you did, so they can see your path. Because I find this thing. What I did was I read a lot of biographies. And I thought, well, if they've gone to somewhere that I want to, how did they get there? They did this, then they did that, then they did this. So if we jump ahead, I don't think it gives them the full ladder. So I need the ladder of
okay.
O levels is very spread, but then did you specialize in, English and things and languages, or did you go sciences? And then what did you do at university? That's that journey. So that a young woman listening, teenager goes, Well, they've done that. I'd quite like to do that. So that's what I need.
Yeah, okay. Well, I went to quite an old-fashioned school, a state school,
Right.
but it was a grammar school where I grew up, and it had this rather old-fashioned headmistress. And so we did things like we did home economics, which
Right.
actually I think is a great thing. I think everyone should do home economics because then you learn how your body works and how to feed yourself well and how all sorts of other things happen.
But at that time, it was just for girls. Just.
For me, yeah. And I was at a girls' school. So,
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah. And in the sixth form, if you weren't too good at your academic side, you got taught how to type so you could become a secretary. And
Right.
there's absolutely nothing wrong with being able to type and being a secretary, but it was a bit of an indication of narrow paths available
Right.
to girls, I think, of sort of assumptions about the kinds of jobs girls might do.
That's what was available. What was happening to you, though? It's you I'm interested in.
So what happened to me was I did, as you say, for O levels, I did quite a spread of things.
Yeah.
And then for A levels, what did I do? English,
Yeah.
which I loved. History, which I'm going to be honest, I hated, but we did what should have been an exciting period of history. We did the European wars of religion, and we did the English Civil War, but not in a way that was terribly exciting. I didn't get a great sense of the passion and the intellectual rough and tumble of that period. It was just lots of dates and massacres. It wasn't terribly exciting in its own way. And then I did classics.
Oh.
Me, I loved classics. Oh, I loved it.
So, and in classics, are you doing? For classics, are you doing language as well as the history, or is it all mainly about the history?
It was, so we did literature, we did history, and we did sort of a bit of the kind of the politics and culture and those kinds of things. But everything I read in translation, so in English. But absolutely loved it. And then I went to do a degree in English, which I also absolutely was brilliant for me. And I'm afraid I was one of those people at school.
Where'd you do it, Francis? Where'd you do it?
Oh, where did I do it? I did it at Leicester University.
Okay, good to know.
Yep, and loved being at Leicester. And I tell you an interesting thing, when people, I appreciate at the moment students are kind of locked down at home, but when you're thinking about going to university, you know, I think some people wonder about, do you want to go to a big city or do you want to go somewhere very different? I grew up in Southend-on-Sea on the Essex coast, which is sort of medium-sized town. And what I really enjoyed about Leicester was it was big enough to be different and interesting, but not so big that I felt overwhelmed by it as a kind of youngster moving away from home for the first time. And it was really enormously culturally diverse and had a lot of energy to it as a city. So I really enjoyed making that move, but without feeling like I was overwhelmed by the move I've made. So it's always interesting to think about the geography that you can end up in.
Yeah, I was at Sheffield Uni, so I wanted to be out of the south. I grew up on the very south coast, so I wanted to be out of there and towards the north. Not as north as you can go, but still Sheffield, great there. And I was actually, I think I was a bit of a fish out of water for the first year, but then I grew to love it, and the people were fantastic. People at Sheffield, so generous. The bus fares were cheap, but they would give you the bus fare if you didn't have the change. They were just, your average Sheffield person was just wonderful people. So I grew to love Sheffield, and that's why I had my idea to run marathons from. I was doing a training run in Sheffield. I was back there for an event, and I thought, I think I'll run around the whole of the United Kingdom. And I bought my sports equipment in a shop in Sheffield. So all the marathons start from Sheffield. Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. My brother lives in Sheffield these days, so I do go there periodically. I'm very fond of it. And you're surrounded by all that fabulous countryside as well.
Exactly. Now, Kinder Scout between there and Snake Pass going over to Manchester, and I was there as a Boy Scout on Kinder Scout. So yes, I went through a whole mini life really in Sheffield. So I've got a lot of good things for that. And Leicester Haymarket. I played Edward II at Leicester Haymarket Theatre, which I think unfortunately now might have been gone, but still, yes, I've had a good time in Leicester as well. So that's good. So so that really helps. I mean, university, it was a different life, but it does, you know, more and more people are going to university, which I think is good. To give them that sense, they don't have to. In the end, I dropped out after a year because I was ready for performing. and I was doing accounting and financial management, but I take it you would encourage people to go and at least try it, see how they like it. It's a good thing to go to, isn't it?
I think so. I think it's I think that's that experience of being, ideally, I guess maybe for me, being away from home, meeting different people, having to kind of forge a different part of your life, and then getting a chance to study extraordinary things.
Yeah.
The studying is really important, and I think it can open up all kinds of doors for you. But I just think that the intellectual pursuit of it is important. You open your mind up and you learn about other things.
What did you say that you did there? Was it English, did you say?
English, yeah. And then I have subsequently, because I changed careers, as I say, about 12 years ago, I went back to university. So I went to do a master's degree at SOAS, which is the School of Oriental and African Studies in London.
Wow.
So I did that for a year in my early 40s, which was a challenging thing, I have to say, to go back to university.
Yep.
20 years after you left. And again, I mean, it was hugely demanding to kind of go cold into a new subject at master's level. It's a tough thing to do. But I made some great friends who helped me through it. And I learned a huge amount. I draw on that study and that knowledge every day in my work here at CARE.
Excellent. So, brilliant. And the COVID situation, you are helping manage the CARE's response to COVID. I take it that's just making everything even more hellish.
It's been a really extraordinary year for us. All of the challenges that we see in the UK, you're obviously seeing around the world. And I was talking earlier about gender-based violence. And one of the things that we know about that is that mostly that's done in the home, through often through your intimate partner, through your husband, your boyfriend. That's the terrible truth of it. And when you're locked down at home, often in very cramped conditions, quite likely with an enormous amount of extra strain on you as a household, unfortunately, that violence increases enormously, and your routes out of it have largely been closed off. We know that what we do in normal times, we have all kinds of brilliant work that we're doing around gender-based violence. It starts off with work we do directly with women. We provide groups that women can participate in. We provide services they can access if they're suffering abuse, safe spaces you can come to. But we also try and create a change in structures in society. We're trying to change people's attitudes so they understand that this is not the way to be dealing with difficulties in life. This is not the way to deal with each other in relationships, and that actually it's not okay for women and girls to be less than men and to be abused when life is hard. And so we'll campaign for laws to be changed, but we're trying to change the attitude that people have within their own societies, their own communities. And that work is much, much harder, of course, when you're locked down. So we've had to find other ways of doing those things.
Yeah.
So we're finding we're doing things, you'll find the first thing that we did when the COVID restrictions came in was we talked, as we always do, we talked to women and girls, and we talked to local groups who we work with, who are our equal partners in this work, and found out what was going to be valuable. And different things work in different contexts. So some places we're doing radio broadcasts, in other places, we're doing things like working with police stations to make sure that they have safe spaces that women can come to, which are both safe from violence, but safe from COVID as well.
Yeah.
We've done some great work in Kenya, where we've been handing out hand sanitizer to women. And on the back of it, there's a helpline number if you're suffering from violence, because that's something they can have in their pocket, and no one's going to suspect anything, and no one's going to question them about it.
Very good. Like that idea.
And other things we've done, we do a lot of work with education. We're really passionate about girls' education, particularly, and obviously the schools all closed, just as they have here. Schools closed all around the world. And so, for example, in Somalia, we've been training teachers so that they can do some of the remote working. And at the beginning of lockdown, we handed out packs, home learning packs to students. And we've worked with students to try and help make sure that they came back to school when the schools reopened. We do some similar work in Afghanistan, and I was hearing a fantastic story recently about a teacher who we work with in Afghanistan, out in a very rural part of the country. And we had been doing a lot of work trying to help girls to keep up with their studying during their lockdown period, even though they've often been required to do a lot more domestic work in the house and those kinds of things. 99% of the girls that we worked with had gone back to school when the schools reopened.
Right.
But during that lockdown period, there was this great teacher we've been working with who every week was going out and visiting homes in a safe way, you know, mask on, keep your distance, but providing library books to students.
Right.
And swapping library books over. So partly it's great, they're in touch with their teacher, the family are reminded that they're part of this school community and that they're valued and that their role at the school is important. But it's also just stimulating their learning and helping them to stay engaged. And I'm sure that kind of effort that individual people around the world have made in their own areas has just made a massive difference.
Yeah,
in terms
that's
of
excellent.
people to stay together. So, I mean, I sit here in the UK and, you know, a lot of what we're doing is about raising money for the work. So fantastic that you're helping us with this. I'm really grateful for that. But it's also about helping people to understand what's going on, helping people also to understand how important our contribution to the rest of the world can be. We're all part, as you're saying, we're all part of one global humanity, and we need to look after each other.
Yeah.
So the money that we all give really makes a difference to people who are just like us, but finding circumstances much harder at the moment. And it's really important that we keep doing that. And I would say it's really important we do that as individuals, but also as a country, that we keep that generosity alive.
Absolutely. Thank you, Frances. Great to talk to you. I'll give a shout out.
It's been a real pleasure.
And
Let's actually do it in Paris next time, Eddie. Hey.
it would be nice. It'd be nice to get out of this COVID hell.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I put on my French stripy top for you, especially to help with your Parisian,
Very good.
Parisian feel. So
we've got a French stripy flag as well.
Exactly.
And there's.
Well, good luck. Thank you so much for doing this and for including care in it. We're really glad to be part of it. And you know, Godspeed.
Thanks for your help. Thank you. Cheers, Frances. Take care.
Bye.
Okay, so donations.